Welcome back to Brainwaves, or welcome if this is your first time here. Today I want to talk about something that can quietly affect so many parts of our lives, even when we don't fully realise it or don't want to admit it. And that is the fear of being judged. The feeling of being watched, being evaluated, or worrying about what other people might think. It doesn't always show up in obvious ways. Sometimes it's subtle. It's hesitating before you say something, or overthinking what you're about to post on social media, or replaying conversations in your head afterwards. It can be holding yourself back from doing something you really want to do, just in case someone might judge you. Sometimes it can feel just like you're being careful or aware or trying to get things right. But underneath that, there's a worry about how you're being seen and what other people might be thinking. And it can be quite a heavy thing to carry, because it means you're not just experiencing moments as they are. You're also watching yourself from the outside, almost like you're trying to manage how you're perceived in real time. And that takes energy. It can make simple things feel bigger than they need to be, like conversations, posting something online, or meeting new people. Things that should feel natural start to feel a bit tense. And over time, you might notice yourself holding back more, saying less than you want to, keeping things to yourself, playing things a bit safer. Not because you don't have anything to say, but because it feels easier than risking being misunderstood. And it can start to affect you, because when you hold yourself back often enough, it can start to feel like you're not being fully yourself, like you're editing parts of who you are. And that can feel frustrating, even if you don't always realise why. And the thing is, even when no one is actually saying anything, the fear itself can still feel very real. So where does it come from? Why do we care so much about what other people think? I think part of it comes from how we're wired. As humans, we naturally want to be accepted, to feel like we belong, to feel understood, to feel like we fit in. And being judged can feel like the opposite of that. It can even feel like rejection. So your mind does what it does best. It tries to protect you from that feeling by making you more aware of how you might come across to others. Sometimes that awareness turns into pressure. Pressure to say the right thing, or to act the right way, or just not get it wrong. Over a period of time, this can make us second guess ourselves, even in small situations. You might think, what if that sounded stupid? What if they think differently about me now? What if I've said too much? Or not enough? And the interesting thing is that most of the time, we're just filling in the gaps. We don't actually know what someone else is thinking. But our minds create a version of it anyway, and usually it leans negative. And that can make you think like you're constantly being judged, even when you're not. And something that can add to this is our past experiences. Times where you did feel judged or embarrassed or misunderstood. And your mind remembers that, so it tries to stop you from feeling that way again. But instead of just protecting you, it can also start limiting you. You hold back more. You overthink more. You question yourself more. Not because anything bad is happening now, but because you remember how it felt before. And slowly you start to shrink yourself a little. Not because you want to, but because it feels safer. And that's where it becomes difficult. Because the fear of being judged can stop you from fully being yourself. But I think it is really important to remember this. People are usually not thinking about you as much as you think they are. Everyone is in their own head, thinking about their own actions, their own worries, their own insecurities, just like you are. And the main thought that has previously helped me to overcome this fear is, even if someone does have an opinion, it doesn't define you. It doesn't change who you are. It's just their perspective. And you don't have control over that. But you do have control over how much power you give it. So how do you start to move away from this fear? Not completely, but in a way that feels manageable. One thing that can help is noticing when you are predicting judgment. When your mind is jumping to, they're going to think this about me. And gently asking, do I actually know that for a fact? Because realistically, you don't. Another thing is allowing yourself to be a bit more visible in small ways. Speaking up slightly more. Sharing something without over-editing it. Letting things be a bit imperfect. Because the more you do that, the more you realise that nothing bad actually happens. And even if it does feel uncomfortable at first, that feeling passes. And something else that's really important is separating your worth from other people's opinions. Because your value doesn't change based on what someone thinks of you. It's not something that can be taken away like that. And I think a helpful shift is, instead of asking, what will they think of me? You ask, how do I feel about this? Because that brings the focus back to you, your choices, your values, your voice. And that is what actually matters. And if you've been holding yourself back lately, just take a moment to notice that. Not to judge it, just be aware of it. Because awareness is always the first step. And you don't have to change everything at once. Just small shifts. Letting yourself show up a little bit more. Questioning those assumptions. Being a little less hard on yourself. And over time, the fear starts to have less control. And one of the ideas of this podcast is that it is a space where you can be yourself. So if this is something you feel you can relate to, or you've experienced in your own way, please feel free to message me on Instagram. I'd genuinely love to hear from you, and it might help someone else to feel a little bit less alone as well. Because a lot of the time we think we're the only ones who feel like this, but we're not. If this episode has resonated with you, I'm really glad you're here, and I hope you'll be here for the next one.